I have taken over the Apostate Sisters channel. That's why I want to tell this story, because there are women in that position and they feel like they are doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Whatever floats your boat there, Nance.
I mean, we're here to talk about what floats Kelly's boat.
If you want sex, all you got to do is ask, have you been a naughty girl?
Don't use silicone lube with silicone toys. And don't touch your silicone toys to each other. It doesn't go well. That one gets a boob squeeze. Yeah.
Boob squeeze.
I really enjoy being spanked as part of sexual play.
And so that would do it for you.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
how you. That's
Thanks.
so sexy and hot, Kelly. I love that. Yeah. Welcome to the Apostate Sisters interview series, where we hold space for those who've walked away from their faith and are living beyond it. Today, we're welcoming back Kelly, better known online as Godless Granny. She's an incredible woman we've admired for some time now. And today, she shares the deeply personal and powerful parts of her story. She takes us through the dark years of her marriage, years when her marital duty felt like one. Consent wasn't even a concept, and she thought that following God's way meant she couldn't say no. But this isn't just a story of hardship. It's a story of transformation. Granny opens up about how those dark times ended, how she reclaimed her autonomy, and how she built a new, empowered relationship with both herself and her husband. This conversation is raw, real, and a bit spicy. We dive into boundaries, pleasure, and the radical shift that happens when a person takes control of their own body and desires. We were truly honored to hold space for this conversation, and we're bolstered in our opinion of Granny as an absolute badass. You won't want to miss this one. Here we are to talk about the dark years and all of the deep shit that you're going to bring to share with us. I sense that it's a story of transformation and victory in the end, though. So I'm
Yes,
here for this, Granny. And I really appreciate that you found us to be a safe space to bring this story.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Ooh.
Thank you.
I want to preface my comments by saying, well, first of all, if there's any kids watching, don't. If there's any adults, you've got kids around, don't watch this with kids around. This is not for children. The second thing I want to say is there's a reason why I want to tell this story. And the reason I want to tell this story is because a lot of people cannot understand why a woman would do what I did. They don't understand why a woman would stay. They don't understand why someone would be so into a religion as to be this deceived, but I was.
Mhm.
And I think that will explain a lot of why I put up with what I put up with.
Okay.
And you know, if you want to have a conversation with a woman who's in that kind of a position, I think you have to understand why she's still there. And if you just tell her, you don't have to put up with that, that's not going to do it. You know, you've
No.
got to find the core reasons of why she thinks she has to, and address those first. A lot of what I'm sharing here, I won't talk about on my own channel. And the reason I won't talk about it on my own channel is there are family members that do not know about this. And there are family members that would not want to hear this. And so this is a safe space. My family will not find this. They will not look for this. But I can share this. And I have shared this with other people. You know, I've shared this with friends. I've shared this with counselors. But here's basically what happened is it began fairly innocently, you know, with just during sex with my husband. Sometimes I sometimes have a little bit of trouble breathing. I have allergies and my nose will get a little stuffy. and his nose would be in a position that I couldn't breathe. And so I would reposition my head so I could breathe. And he would put his head back so I couldn't breathe again. And I would put my head back so I could. And then he'd put it back so I couldn't. And I was so feeling that it was my duty as a wife to please my husband that I finally just said, if that's what he wants, if that's what pleases him, then that's what we'll do. And if he suffocates me, he suffocates me. What difference does it make? And that's where we started.
To clarify, did he know he was causing you
No.
to be in the position?
No.
Okay.
No, he was not aware.
I have another question. So how long had you been married at this point that started?
Okay. The dark years began shortly before Robin was born. So we'd already been married for at least 15 years. Let's see.
Wow.
I'm not sure exactly when it began, but probably somewhere around 1995, 96, 97, somewhere in that time frame. So we were married in 82. So yeah, we've been married about 15 years when this happened.
You married him the year I was born. Cool.
Okay. So then the next thing is, there was something that he was doing that was painful. And that I told him, I don't like that. That hurts. And he kept doing it anyway. And I finally, like I said, I gave up and said, if it pleases him that much, yeah, it hurts, but it doesn't hurt that much. I can take it.
Oh, no.
So I would just let him do it. And that's how you fall down this slippery slope. It's one thing, and then it's another thing, and then it's another thing. And each time, it's just, well, I'm supposed to be pleasing him. I'm supposed to be doing what he wants. This is all about him.
Oh.
And so, yeah, and at that point, sex was ruined for me completely because it was all about him. This isn't for me. This is for him. And
Do you think you had always thought of it that way? Like even in the first 15 years?
no, I don't think I did. I don't think I did.
Sacrifices.
Yeah. And it got worse and it got worse. And it got to the point where sex was a real chore and I didn't want to do it anymore. And a couple times I let him know, there were times when I flat out said, no, I don't want to. And he wouldn't take no for an answer.
Okay.
It wasn't that he would physically force me because he never did. But what he would do is he would continue caressing me and would not let me sleep. And that was the major issue for me was sleep. I was too tired. And I realized if I just give him what I want, what he wants, and finish him off, then he'll let me sleep. So that's what I started doing, and there were, like I said, there were a couple times when I would tell him, no, I really don't want to, but he wouldn't stop. So I would give in. This went on for a very long time. And I did not ever try to figure out what the problem was. I did not ever put words to this problem or try to describe it. I really felt like I was performing a service to God by enduring whatever came my way. And that's how deep I was into this religion. And when it became to the point where it was getting unbearable, that's when I started telling myself, okay, you need to turn yourself off. You have no thoughts. You have no feelings. Just go with it because that's what God wants. This
You're a
is what God
tool.
has for you.
You're a fucking vessel for God.
Right, exactly.
Man, he put in
Exactly. And the few times when I would start to think, okay, is this really right? Is this a problem? Maybe this isn't normal? I would go and I'd look at my Bible, and there is one verse in there, and it's funny to this day, I can never remember if it's First Corinthians or Second Corinthians, and it's either 7:14 or 14:7. But it's the one that says that the wife's body does not belong to her, it belongs to the husband. And the husband's body does not belong to him, it belongs to the wife. And I wanted so much to tear that verse out of the Bible, but there it was right there, reminding me that, this was my duty to give myself to him. And there even was a point where our Sunday school teacher, who was the pastor's wife, told a story about one day when she came home from work and she was exhausted, and her husband had put rose petals going up the stairs and had drawn a bath for her and had all this stuff, ready for her. And she said she walked in the door and she felt like, really, today? And so I asked her, is it okay to say, no, not today? And she thought about that and she said, no, you really shouldn't do that.
Ooh.
So that just reinforced that this is what you're supposed to do.
Wow.
Now, it was actually my husband that started the process of getting us out of it.
Out of church?
Out of the dark, coming out of the dark years and starting to heal
Okay.
the relationship. And what happened was our relationship, as you could tell, deteriorated terribly. The one thing that he said once that just made me so angry was one time when I told him I didn't want to. He said, I can make you want it. And I was so angry because I was thinking, no, you can't. You think you can, but no, you can't. And there was one time when I woke up in the middle of the night and he was inside me. And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, that's how tired I was.
That,
What?
yeah.
Well, was this something that was happening, awake, like with great frequency?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like,
I guess it depends on what you mean. I mean, it was happening often enough that it was, a serious, serious problem. But I mean, maybe once a week, I mean, is that a great frequency? I don't know.
Do you think, looking back now, he had some sort of sex addiction at the
No,
time?
no. His major problem is he's completely oblivious. And part of that is he has zero curiosity. I mean, when I go shopping for Christmas presents, I put them in the closet, and he walks in the closet every day and he can see them sitting right there. He would never open them. And I know that because he has zero curiosity. If I'm upset about something, he's not going to ask me what I'm upset about because
Interesting.
yeah. And so once we got into where we were starting to recover, I did ask him about, did you not notice all the nights when you were finished and I was crying? And he said, no, I didn't notice. And I said, how about in the morning when I was so angry I wouldn't even speak to you? And he said, well, I just figured you were in a mood. And so,
but at the
part of
same
it is
time, are
him
you
being
saying that
completely
you didn't feel like you could be really forthright about bringing these things up to him, right? You kept it
Oh,
all,
no, I did
right?
not at all. I did not at all. And like I said, it didn't even occur to me to even think about hey, this is a problem. What is the problem? And give a name to. I still have a hard time saying the word.
I'm just thinking about these dark years. And okay, it was about 15 years into your marriage that it started, that you the two of you kind of started on, maybe I would call it like bad habits when it came to your sex life, at least. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
okay, at least bad habits and people not knowing their autonomy and things like that. And then how many years till when you started coming out of it? And then I'll
Probably
dive
about
into
10 years.
10 years. 10 years.
10
Okay.
years.
Okay.
Did you
So
ever
then,
go ahead.
no, you.
Did you ever feel any guilt or anything taking it on yourself? Like there's more you could have done?
I do now. I didn't then.
Okay.
You
Well, I
know,
mean, he should have been more in tune with how you felt, but at the time,
yeah, he definitely should have been more in tune, but I shouldn't have been so, well, I don't know if I can really blame myself for it, but I shouldn't have been so stupid as to think that God would want me to do this.
Well, I mean, are there things about your Christian conditioning that you can directly point to understand how this may have
Oh, yeah.
happened?
There's
Yeah.
no question at all.
Yeah, how do you link
Because this
that?
was definitely being pushed by the church completely. You know,
Yeah.
not directly. I mean, they certainly never told us to do this, but they certainly told us, it's your duty as a wife to please your husband and to make him happy. And if your husband isn't happy, that's your fault because that's your responsibility.
So
Um,
you didn't, I'm sorry, Paz. Yeah.
No, you're okay.
So I don't know if you wanted to go here yet, but you do identify as asexual. I mean, you just weren't getting any sexual pleasure out of these experiences with your husband, at least not at
oh
this
no,
any
not at
longer,
all.
right? Okay.
Mhm.
Well, and so to tag on to that, great, Nancy. My question was, prior to the dark years or during the dark years, was there a time that you ever thought sexual pleasure, like doing this is meant to be pleasurable for me? Like, did you see it that way
Hmm.
even before the dark years?
I knew it was supposed to be, but it is not easy to arouse me sexually. And so occasionally sex would be good, but it was more often not than it was.
Okay. Even
Mhm.
before the dark years then.
Yeah, even before.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, that was kind of going to be my question too, but hey, we can talk offline there, Kelly, and we got some toy recommendations for you. Well, okay, that's another question. Like, have you used toys or anything else to try to get yourself off?
No, because
It,
that's something that I mentioned at the conference that I'm just starting to consider because of listening to Vice Rhino talk about some of this, talk about sex toys and so forth, and I just it's left over from the religious way of thinking that this is wrong, this is bad, you shouldn't do this. And even though I know that's not true, I don't know, it still feels kind of like only bad people do that, and I know that's not true, but I have a hard time
You
getting over that.
Okay, when you think about that, the only bad people do that. Do you get any feelings in your body anywhere? Like a
No.
clench or a poke or a no? There's nothing you identify of like I'm clenching down here or I'm holding my trauma or anything. No.
Mm-mm.
Okay. I guess I brought that up because I had this moment um when I was kind of reclaiming being a sexual being a little bit, where I was like, I figured out there was a block that I had. I was like holding a block myself,
Mhm. Mhm.
where it was like, yes, I could get off, but it was like something was still missing about that. And it
Mm.
was like, once I went, oh, I just have to let the feelings through. It was like I mentally lifted some kind of curtain, and all of a sudden there was a lot more sensation. So,
Mm.
yeah. So,
Mm.
I don't know if there's a name for that or what that was all about, but it seemed like there was something of just me deciding, like, no, I can unplug this problem.
I
you
like
know?
that. And I never had that problem at all. I was sexual from the moment I fell out of the JJ. But Kelly, do you ever watch? Like, are you heterosexual? I should clarify.
Yes.
Okay, do you ever watch like a movie or a show and you see like incredibly hot guy on there, like some that like make me like pants what I'm watching? Like, does that ever happen to you?
Not exactly. I do really like looking at big muscles. Guys that are really muscular. But on the other hand, that does not turn me on sexually. I would look at someone like Dwayne Johnson or Dave Bautista, and I like looking at it, admiring their body. I would never consider having sex with someone like that. I would be too intimidated.
I feel the same way. For me, I call it, I don't know for sure if it is, but being demisexual, where I feel like I don't have that like, oh, let me get that guy right now. Like that just doesn't happen to me. But if I know somebody really deeply,
it's more like admiring a really good painting.
Yeah.
It looks really good. I like to look, but that's it. I only want to look. I don't want to touch.
Wow, I am the opposite of you two. I could see someone attractive from both genders and just be like, oh yeah, I kind of want to just go home and have sex with that person, and that's it. like I've never had any issue with it whatsoever.
Now there is something I can be turned on by dancing. And it can be either a male or a female that I'm watching. Although, if I watch a female dancing and I get turned on, it's because I'm relating to her. And I'm starting to feel the sexualness, the sexiness that I'm relating to her, but I still want a man. I don't want a woman.
Yeah. No, that makes sense, I think. All the kind of sexual movements sometimes,
But isn't that how it ought to be? That we all get to decide that for ourselves.
Yeah. Boy, this is fascinating. I know.
I feel like I have a.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to tell you, I have something in common with Ben Shapiro's wife.
Wait, you tell, Granny.
And I think that might be part of why it is so difficult for me to get turned on is I'm dry. I'm completely dry. I have never been wet. Ever.
Oh, okay.
Ever. I don't know if the plumbing doesn't work or what it is, but yeah.
Have you, during the dark years, was there lubrication involved?
Hope so. That'd have been painful.
We used saliva for a long time. I would just use some saliva on myself. Now we use commercial lubricants, and boy, that makes a difference. Boy, it's a lot,
doesn't it? Science for the win.
Water-based.
Depends on what you're using it for, Nancy.
All right, fine, fair.
Here's my public service announcement for this episode. Don't use silicone lube with silicone toys. And don't touch your silicone toys to each other. It doesn't go well.
Oh, really? What happens?
Silicone makes other silicone all sticky and weird. It's not fun.
Okay.
Not sexy. Not sexy.
Okay.
Public service announcement.
Good to know. Good to know.
I say, Patty, both Patty and I have our own boxes, baskets of sex toys. Maybe we have to go through those at the end of the show.
I don't know that we do.
I don't know how much we'd keep in there, but that might be fun to go through. But anyway, yeah.
I'm just trying to think if there's anything else I'm curious about these 10 years. But I guess my question on the lube was having to do with the dark years, if there was lube involved, because I could see that being a problem. And if saliva is the only thing being used, I can see that being not nearly as pleasant, adding to the struggles there. You mentioned that your husband, you characterized him as somewhat oblivious to what was going on, that you were kind of putting yourself in this prison of pain during this time, feeling like you were doing what you needed to do to meet God's standards. What did you think of your husband? Like good man? How did you?
Angry that he couldn't see what was going on.
Okay.
I was really frustrated
Yeah.
that he just didn't get it. And, no matter how many times I told him, I don't like this, I don't want that, it just never got through.
So he kept doing things even though you said, "Don't do it, I don't like that."
Right.
Mhm.
And so, I mean, to me, that's like you set a boundary and he walked right past it,
Yep.
Yep.
and
Well,
you were in a place of feeling like you shouldn't try to push back or didn't know maybe how to hold your own boundary on that?
Both. Both.
Both. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
so Kelly,
Mm.
what about in your other aspects of your everyday life? I mean, did you feel like you could talk to your husband about boundaries, or maybe you didn't have any at this point? Never mind the sexual aspect of it. Maybe in life you didn't have any boundaries. Did you ever say anything to him like, don't leave that on the counter, I don't know, some shit, and
Oh,
then
yeah,
he would
I
go
would
do it?
I would say something like that. Mhm.
And he listened
Yeah.
when you said, though, okay.
Ooh, that's
So it was
interesting.
just the sexual part where he had, like, he invaded your boundaries. He went crazy.
Well, okay. It depended on how he felt. If
Mm,
I said, there's still stuff he does that just irk me to no end, and I've told him about
weird.
it, and I know he's not gonna change. Like, for one thing, he puts the bowls backwards in the dishwasher, and I've told him, "If you put them that way, you're washing the outside of the bowl. If you turn it the correct way, you wash the inside of the bowl."
Oh, up. He faces them up. The
Well,
bowl?
they're on the top rack, but the water comes up from the center, and he's
Oh,
got
yeah.
them facing the back of the dishwasher instead of the center of the dishwasher.
Yeah, got it.
And I've told him more than once that that's not the way they go, and he's seen me turn them around multiple times, but he still insists on putting them the wrong way every time. And, so, like, if I tell him something and he thinks, if he doesn't think it's a problem, he'll do it my way. But if he thinks his way is better, he'll just completely, it's as if I never said anything.
Yeah, okay.
Why is it
So
sounding familiar?
I mean,
I feel like so many women have issues
yeah,
like
right.
the
I
same.
mean, there's a head of household assumption going on there versus a partnership assumption going on there,
Right. Right.
which I have to recognize, like, probably, that's how things were for a really long time, and everyone was cool with it. And so,
Men got spoiled.
yeah,
They got spoiled.
I mean, yes. So, yeah, I mean, it brings up the good question in general of how do we as women shift this so that we
Mhm.
get fucking listened to?
Yeah, it makes me think of, Dee from Apostasy, Stacy and Dee podcast, Stacy's mom's podcast, where Dee was talking about, she was having sex with a man one night, and he actually asked her partway through, like, is everything okay, and some people might sneer at that and be like, oh, you're just killing the mood by doing something like that. And she was like, well, what kind of mood a person going for? This is what the men of the future should be doing. They should be in tune
Yes.
with what's going on and making sure that the woman is enjoying hers or other partner, whoever they have, is enjoying themselves too. Because maybe
Mhm.
we haven't gotten to that point yet where we feel like we can really stand up for what we do or don't want, especially sexually. Holy shit.
Right.
Yeah.
So you went through a long time of having it not be the way you wanted, being angry about it, and not knowing how to reclaim yourself
Mhm.
out of that. Like, I can feel the, like, tension in my neck just thinking about it, right? Like, I am
Yes.
just feeling a bit trapped by that. Um,
Mm.
you mentioned him doing something painful that you didn't want him to do. Do you want to say what that thing is?
It
You don't have
he
to.
he would press his erect penis into my thigh, and
Ouch.
it just hurt, it was just painful on my thigh muscle, but he really liked that, and no matter how many times I told him, "Don't do that," he would keep doing it.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to be said for good sex being about good communication, huh?
Yeah.
Man.
But
All
I mean, I
right.
guess I have something similar. So like this may be a simple example, but my husband and I, whenever we were like taking a road trip or whatever, his way of greeting me, sometimes you just kind of like whack someone on the leg is like, hey, how's it going? How you doing? Yada yada. Well, he whacks really hard, right? And, and I've told him before, I'm like, that really hurts. Can you like either pat my
Slow
shoulder
down.
or just do like a rub? I said I'm a woman. I'm kind of, not as physically strong as you. I'm sorry, that's not to say not all women are, but I'm not. Okay, you're a strong dude. Stop doing that. And so, but he keeps doing it. I'm like, excuse me, I told you to stop doing this. Boundaries. Like we asked you to stop. I
Boundaries.
know it's not easy to change a pattern when we're used to doing something, but at least let us know you're trying. Just don't argue with us when we say, please stop doing that. Okay. We mean it.
Right.
Stop fucking doing that.
So eventually you figured it out, though, or you are figuring it out. And the
Well,
dark
like I
years.
said, I don't think I would have without his help. Well, actually, there were two
Oh,
things that helped. One was
okay.
him, and the other was a poster. But we started coming out of it when one day I just completely broke down and I said, I can't do this anymore. I can't pretend I'm happy anymore. I'm not. I'm angry. And he looked at me like, well, then don't. It's like, why are you doing that?
Oh.
You know?
And you were referring to that
Yeah,
being sex,
well,
specifically sex?
no, it wasn't specifically sex. It was just, yeah, it was also just in general trying to pretend that everything was okay, that our relationship was okay when it clearly was not.
Okay.
And we then made an appointment with the pastor to go talk about relationship issues. And
Mm.
this is the thing that just blew my mind is when we were talking to the pastor, he told the pastor, I forced myself on her. And I was flabbergasted because number
What?
one, that was the first time the problem had been identified. I
So
had
he
never put it
knew.
that way.
Okay.
And two, that opened the door for me to talk about it. For the first time, I realized he's okay if I talk about this. And yeah, so yeah, that just really, that was the beginning. Although shortly after that, I started talking about it with him and I mentioned the R word and he's, whoa, 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 no, that didn't happen. And
Oh.
I said, read the definition in the dictionary. It's
Yeah.
Right.
word for word what you said you did. But he still
Oh,
had that disconnect. No, I didn't rape you.
holy
I just forced
cognitive
myself. Yeah,
dissonance.
yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Oh, Kelly.
And then the other thing was when I started, that's when I started looking at, okay, how did we get here? What happened? And so when I started talking to him about, okay, this is what happened, this is how we got here, he said, whoa, whoa, whoa. No, it happened one time. It was only one time.
Oh. That was my
And
next question,
that
if you
put
saw
me
it all.
completely back in the closet because I don't know which time is the one time that he admits to.
'Cause there were so many. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because to you, it was all of them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
I'm curious to see what this what pastor's reaction is going to be.
Yeah.
Well, he actually was quite supportive of me.
Mhm.
He said, "Okay, if believe her. If she says this is a problem, believe her."
Yep.
He suggested to me that, if he's doing stuff you don't want, just leave. Go sleep in a different bed. Yes, we had a guest room. Um, I've actually never done that because of sex. I've done that because he's snoring and I can't sleep, but
Ah,
Okay. So
sorry.
he
So,
kind of had insight.
yeah, he kind of did.
Kind of.
The next thing that happened that really helped put everything in perspective for me was when we were moving my second daughter, my younger daughter, into her dorm room her sophomore year of college. So this would have been in 2008. And there were posters in the lobby, in the elevator, in the hallway, and they said, no means no. And there was a whole long list of stuff. This means no. This, and I can't remember what was all on the list, but near the bottom of the list was crying means no. And that one, and seeing that poster over and over and over again as we went downstairs and got another load and came upstairs and put it in the room and went downstairs and got another load and came upstairs and put it. Seeing that over and over and over really got to me. I was, okay, this is not right. If I'm crying, then this is not okay.
yeah.
And that was probably the most empowering thing for me was seeing that
Wow.
poster over and over and over.
And I'm so happy to hear that was at a school.
I know. I was like, wow, the power of a liberal arts education, huh?
Mhm, mhm. Oh, that's at the University of Indiana, Bloomington.
Okay.
Mhm.
Those should be in elementary schools. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know about elementary schools.
Well,
I
the
don't.
conversation around consent and boundaries starts in
Ah,
elementary
okay.
school, or should.
Yes,
Yeah.
because I feel like the young ones are that much more vulnerable to creepers. Yeah.
Mhm.
Who say, here is what you should not be accepting from anyone. Yeah. But yeah.
Isn't I mean, really, like, truly the power of information,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? Because there was a poster, just one
Mhm.
poster on the wall, and that, like, changed your relationship to how that ought to look for you.
Mhm. Mhm.
Ugh.
Yeah, another piece of information that I didn't get until after I was an atheist and I was talking to other atheists, and someone brought up that, in the issue of consent, that it's okay to withdraw consent, and I was like, "Really?
Oh,
I had no idea." I thought once you
no.
said yes, that's it. You can't change your mind.
Well, I'm pretty sure that's what the patriarchy would like to think it is, but
Yeah.
wow.
And I got that advice from an 18-year-old kid.
I tell ya that seriously, I would hand the world to kids way faster than to old people at this point.
Yeah, yeah.
They know what they're talking about.
Yeah, they see it. They see it.
Yeah. No, I
Wow.
like that. I like that. That yes, you can give consent and take it away. Just because it
Mhm.
happened once, drunken night out the bar, doesn't mean you have access to it from now on. Yeah.
Or even right in the middle. You can
That's
stop.
yeah,
Even
that for
right,
me was in the
right.
middle. Mhm.
Yes. I say I'm not. Yep. But
Wow.
society tries to make men look weaker than they are too. Like they don't have any control over their bodies and we're the ones in charge. Yeah, like that whole phrase, oh, uh they're the gas, we're the brakes, I think is how it goes. Yeah.
I've never heard that one.
Ugh,
Yeah.
I haven't either. It's gross though.
It is gross, isn't it? Yeah.
Wow.
It's
Yeah.
terrible. Yeah, it's terrible.
Okay, Kelly. So you've had a couple of things happen. You heard your husband admit, kind of, to how he had treated you. And then you felt all empowered by these posters at the college campus that told you something you really needed to know. So what then? There's like cracks, but how did you break things?
Um,
Or fix, I guess, is really, I don't know.
yeah. For a long time, we didn't have sex, hardly at all. I would give it to him for his birthday, and that was about it.
Oh,
Um, um, One thing that still is a bit of an issue is I've told him that I would like him to verbally ask if he wants sex, which he absolutely refuses to do.
Mm.
Yep.
So, but that means sex is entirely in my power, you know. If I offer, he'll take, but he will not ask. So, yeah, if he won't ask, then that's his problem.
Yeah.
Really? So he's aware that he can't take without asking, but won't ask.
Right.
Is that a pride thing? How do you?
I don't
What?
understand that at all. I don't get that. I don't know if it's a stubbornness thing. I don't get it.
Yeah. Like, does it make it not fun if he has to ask? Like that
I don't
wouldn't.
know. I don't know.
I mean, he can make it fun, set a whole mood. You're like, hey, babe,
Right.
down for some stuff tonight. It doesn't have to be this awkward, like, can I get your permission? Yeah, no, he can make it fun.
Mhm.
Well, let's find out. So Kelly, we're gonna play a little game here.
Mm.
If you were getting asked, propositioned, if you will, for a randy night of a sexual encounter, and your husband was gonna ask you in exactly the right way that would for sure get you all fired up, what would that look like? What would he need to do?
Actually, I've actually told him exactly what to say.
Ooh, I want to know.
Well, as you know, but I haven't mentioned yet, is I've recently kind of realized that I really enjoy being spanked as part of sexual play. And I told him, you know, if you want sex, all you got to do is ask, have you been a naughty girl?
Yes!
That one gets a boob squeeze. Yeah.
It's a boob squeeze. Yes.
And so that would do it for you.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
how you. That's
Spank.
so sexy and hot, Kelly. I love that. Yeah.
Okay, not to turn this too serious, but was spanking something that happened to you as a kid?
Oh, yeah.
A form of punishment? Do you
Oh,
think
yeah.
that that's kind of like a kink that's healing a trauma for you?
That's a good question.
Hmm.
That's a really good question. I don't
Because
know the answer.
I was spanked, and obviously I hated it, and I hate being spanked today. Like I
Mhm.
no, like do not. So
However, I mean, I have a friend who's a dominatrix and has a dungeon in town here. And I asked her that question because I was like, I'm kind of noticing that I think kinks somehow have this like connection to traumas. And she
right,
says,
Mm.
oh yeah, you know who
yeah.
wants the spiky kneeling pad? It's the former Catholics.
Mm.
So,
Mm.
you know,
Although I'm not into punishment. You know,
okay.
I've
Yeah.
noticed that, you know, there's different kinds of spanking. I like an erotic spanking. I do not like a punishment spanking.
Can you explain the difference?
Well, you know, in a punishment spanking, he's saying, you know, you were bad, you have to be punished, you know, you shouldn't have done X, and so I'm going to punish you for that. That does not turn me on at all.
Okay.
But it's the, you know, spanking with the rubbing and the caressing and the particularly I really get off with having my clit caressed while I'm being spanked. That really
Ooh,
that really gets me.
I could
Hmm.
see. I could see that.
Yeah.
I know I've often heard, you know, the counter argument to spanking as a punishment being the fact that by spanking the buttocks, like you are bringing blood to that area. And so
Yeah.
it is kind of an erotic thing that might create erotic feelings, even if you're terrified, which is like kind of fucked
Mhm.
up. But it's easy to see then why that would feel good because it is like stimulation
Yeah.
and bringing blood to the area.
And I have poor circulation, so that could be why, you know, I need a spanking in order to in order to have an orgasm.
Your circulation has been so naughty, Kelly.
Well, so hopefully this isn't jumping ahead, but how are orgasms for you, Kelly? Because as an asexual, is spanking like one of the few ways that you can actually have an orgasm? Like, do you have an orgasm off of just vaginal sex?
Um, I can, but it is really difficult.
Same.
Okay.
It is much easier with having my clit caressed while being spanked.
Okay. I like that.
That makes
Yeah.
sense. I mean, I think a vast majority of people with vaginas find that the clit stimulation is kind of number one anyway.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's pretty common that vaginal stimulation alone doesn't get
Mhm.
someone there, you know?
I did. There was this one man I was sleeping with that was able to get me off on nipples alone. And I don't know how he did it, but kudos to him just by stimulating my nipples. Oh, yeah, I had an orgasm. It was incredible. It was incredible.
Mm.
But that's not something that it's a regular occurrence. He just, I guess
Mhm.
he just happened to be skilled in that area. Good job. He was an older man, much older man. You know what he's doing.
Mhm. I think one issue for us is because of our church background, we were both virgins when we got married,
Mhm.
and neither of us has ever had another sex partner. And so neither of us knows what it's like to be with another person.
Yeah.
Right. So I have been married for 20 years, and in the last year I met someone, and right away talked to my husband, you know, about the feelings I was having, and he was actually cool with it. And we made a whole arrangement and had an agreement of what that would look like and what everyone was okay with. Um,
Mm.
so now I have had that experience of sleeping with another person, because same for me and my husband. We were virgins too when we got married. Um, and you know, I guess I'll say I'm glad I had that experience. The relationship has ended now. Um, I don't know. It's like I would have been okay without that. I didn't need to have that, but I am glad I had that as part of my life experience now. Um, so yeah, I think it does give some sort of understanding of different things your body's capable of in
Mhm.
a way,
Mhm.
you know, just because there was more difference than I expected. Not like in a good, bad way, but just like, oh, like that is an entirely different experience, you know?
Right.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, kid's not out.
I feel like the
Um,
college years are the years to really get those knocked out. Like in the movie Bridesmaids, I was watching the other night. It's so funny. They were talking about that's why every girl needs those slutty college years. They can experiment and see what they like. And meanwhile, I'm over here I've had more sexual partners than I even know. I don't even know how many. I don't even know how many, but it doesn't really matter because I got to have fun and experiment. I'm in a monogamous marriage now, but and then I knew what I was looking for when I got married.
Mhm. Mhm.
I have
oh, right. And
plenty to
Kelly, that's
compare
what
to.
you're kind of saying is that, yeah, you don't, I mean, yeah, doesn't that make a case for not like going crazy and sleeping with everybody, but like
Why not?
allowing, but like, okay, so the way I have thought about this is because um, I had relationships prior to marrying my husband where I was a fully grown, sexually embodied human and I didn't have sex. You know, and I actually think it was quite a disservice to those relationships because I think having sex in a romantic adult relationship is, you know, not going to leave out the aces here, you know, asexual people not so much, but for most people, like having sex is a part of that adult human relationship experience. And so like if you're like weirdly keeping that out of it for reasons, I feel like that's going to affect something, right? In terms of
Mhm.
that connectedness and that true understanding and respect of each other.
Almost
And so
infantile. Yeah, it's like a child
right, like it
relationship.
kept that's how I have talked about it. Like it kept some of those relationships that would have been fully adult relationships in my life in a place where I wasn't really embracing my adultness
Mhm.
because I was holding back from that one act, you know?
Who
So
totally
I do think that's a little bit of a problem to the like growth and development and becoming whole, happy, healthy humans for people that limit themselves for religious reasons.
Yeah.
I would be very interested in trying having sex with another person, but I don't know if anyone would ever want to have sex with me under the conditions of knowing that I don't really feel sexually attracted to you. I just want to know what it's like.
I think there's plenty of people that are okay with that.
Oh,
I think so.
Might I suggest finding a man that's uncircumcised too? But that's just my thought. You mentioned the vaginal dryness, and I'm just saying, this is not at all to disparage any of the men that I've slept with out there that are circumcised. I'm not saying it's necessarily better or worse. It's better for me. My husband still has his foreskin, and it does make a difference when it comes to just natural lubrication and just the movement. The skin is supposed to be there. That's why I wore that shirt to Free Flow. I heart foreskin. The foreskin should not be removed. The tip of the penis gets dry, and I'm sorry, that's a whole nother subject, but I highly recommend it. The majority of men in the world do not have their foreskin removed. And there's a reason for it. All the Abrahamic religions will do it, though.
Well, it relates to the dryness in two ways, actually, because the foreskin, like when it's there, it kind of like can roll into its skin, and so it actually reduces the friction in the vaginal canal entirely, where it's more like the pressure rolling inside itself. And then additionally, when the head's totally uncovered like that, the head of it will actually pull any moisture that's in there out. Like whereas if the head's tucking itself back into its foreskin, it's not pulling the moisture out.
The mushroom cap will do that.
You have told me outside of this conversation that there are very good things happening in your relationship with your husband now, though. So I mean, I'm still thinking about how he doesn't ask. But you clearly have something that you do together because there's things you've discovered you like. So like, but you're deciding right now.
Yeah, I decide, and I actually sat him down and had a conversation with him not too long ago and said, there's some things I'd like to try, but I don't know if you're going to be comfortable with this, and I don't want to ask if you're not going to be comfortable. And I told him what I wanted to do, and he said, yeah, if it's going to turn you, I'll do anything to try to turn you on, because he knows that turning me on is not easy. And I've also told him that I have to be in the right frame of mind. If I'm not in the right frame of mind, I can't do it. And it really helps to start getting me in the mood a couple hours in advance.
Prime that pump.
Foreplay.
What you're saying, though, puts me in mind of wondering if he has a deep, deep fear of rejection. I mean, I think that's the reason people don't ask, and the reason people will just kind of sideways try to get what they want, because they are too afraid of being rejected if they ask. Right? Because if you ask, you are allowing someone to say no. So I don't know. That's interesting, though. But I mean, it's in your hands anyway. So that there's something good about that after the dark years, I will say.
Yeah. There was one time when he answered that question when I told him, when the issue was I was just too tired, and I told him, just ask me an hour before we go to bed so that we can go to bed before I get too tired. And he said, well, I don't want to do that because I want to be spontaneous, which really angered me, because his idea of spontaneous means I help myself,
Right. But he's telling himself that that's being like youthful and fun or something, maybe.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's not because,
buddy, come on, buddy.
See, get off on
this hot woman here. You just gotta ask her.
No, does he get off on the taking aspect? Maybe power and control, kind of, sort of.
I think so, and I think so. I do think so, and that's why I think that my finding that I like being spanked maybe help. working for him too, because I think he enjoys it.
Have you given him consent to spank you whenever he wants? Like, is that something that you've kind of left in his court?
No, we only do it when we only do it in the bedroom. We only do it, as foreplay to sex. That's it.
Okay.
Okay.
I love it.
He doesn't
Yeah.
want to hurt me. In fact, he's even a little bit shy about it, and I keep telling him, "No, you're not hurting me. Trust me, you are not hurting me."
Is of the shy with the spanking?
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay.
You ever seen the movie Secretary, Kelly?
No, but I saw a scene from it. I saw a video with a scene from it.
The spanking scene?
Mhm.
Well, there are the spanking scenes.
Okay,
Oh.
but you have told me some other things that are going well in your marriage these
Mhm.
days.
Mhm.
So I'd be curious to know what else is changing between the
Yeah.
two of you in your marriage.
He's more sensitive to things that please me, He buys me fresh flowers almost every week
Aw.
because he found out that I really like fresh flowers, and so he does the grocery shopping, and he buys me fresh flowers almost every week.
That's
Um,
very sweet.
mhm, mhm.
Mm.
And what was it? You mentioned holding hands was something new for you also. I
Oh, no,
think.
we've always held hands.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Um, One thing, though, that has definitely changed since I left the religion is I've started to assert my own autonomy, and that
Mhm.
is something that he does not understand, and I do not know how to get that through to him, is why autonomy is important to me, and I get why he doesn't get it because it's not an issue for him,
Mhm.
but he doesn't get why it is an issue for me, and, when we would go for a walk, he's pushing and pulling my hand to show me where to go and to steer me,
I remember that.
and and so I've started telling I've told him, "Knock it off." Particularly it was probably we have a lot of walking area where we live, and there's a lot of Canadian geese, and there's frequently goose poop on the walkway. And so usually what we're doing is walking around or over the goose poop. And one time I was stepping over some goose poop and he had decided I was supposed to go around it and he's pulling me to go around it. And you're pulling me off balance. I can walk all by myself. I can see the goose
Mhm.
poop. I can step over it. I can go around. I don't need you to show me where to walk. And it's taken a few times, but he's finally stopped. It went from him pushing and pulling me to him just turning my hand a little. And so I started turning his right back.
Yeah.
You want to play fair? Yeah.
Asserting your autonomy. I love it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wish I could get him to understand why autonomy is important to me.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's definitely important, and it's taken us so long to get to even to the point where we're having this conversation where autonomy seems to be just flying out of our mouths, and yet I feel like we're going backwards.
Oh yeah, no
For
question.
well,
Yeah.
obviously we know why, but yeah, it's an uphill battle. We got to keep fighting.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
yeah, that's where learning about consent comes in, learning how to speak up for what we do and don't want. But how do we even know what we do and don't want? Like we haven't
Exactly.
had a chance to really explore that, and so
Right. When we've had too many supposed tos in our way.
should do
Mhm.
this, shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Fuck
Right.
off.
We got to stop shooting on ourselves. Right. That's the thing
Yeah.
I've heard. I love that.
I read a lot of smut, Kelly. If you're into that, I like the hardcore, like dark erotica stuff. I'm telling you, like there's some fucking
That's
shit in there too. And I don't necessarily like all that for me. I like
Mhm.
reading about it though. Like, and there's this whole concept of like fantasy, and I feel like that was appealing to me for a while because I feel like it was healing some sort of trauma. I feel like some
Mhm.
people get themselves like to where they in one book I'm reading about, a woman who pays this company to like fake rape her to send someone out and, break into your house and take your business like as kind of like a thrill almost. And it might be healing some sort of trauma, but I concluded that it's sort of like a fantasy like that could go back to traumas of being stripped of our choice, right? If
Mm.
so we don't have that guilt and shame looming over our heads if someone just takes it. I know in a lot of cultures it's our fault anyway because of what we wore or something like that, or we were asking for it, but I don't know. That was just something I was exploring recently. There's a lot of different aspects to it, but um yeah.
I can definitely get very turned on by words and by erotic literature. I need to buy myself some erotic literature.
There you go. There you
I
go.
got suggestions for you anytime.
Oh, good.
Oh,
Uh,
Yeah.
so what is the current moment like in Godless Granny's house with your husband?
Things are pretty good. Our relationship is pretty good right now. We've got our moments, but for the most part, things are good.
Did he know you were coming on our channel today?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Oh,
did he know? I thought you said, "Did I know?" Did he no. Yes and no. I mean, he asked me if I had anything scheduled today, and I told him I had a show scheduled, and I would be doing it from my studio, and okay.
okay.
Um, I didn't specify whose show it was. I didn't tell him what topic we were talking about, but he did know that I was doing a show today. My husband's still a believer, so he
That's
he wouldn't have any interest in the stuff that I make.
True. That's
Now
not a problem for you guys?
that was my question.
It's something we don't talk about.
Okay.
It's, you do your thing, I'll do my thing. But, when we were in the church, I was the one driving the train. I was
Oh,
the one
yeah.
saying, "We've gotta go to church. We need to be involved in all these programs. We gotta,"
Mhm.
you know, and, early in our marriage, he had said, "Can't we just be pew sitters?" And
I
and I
love
was
that he actually said that. It's just so
yeah.
great.
I think he's actually happier now that I'm an atheist because now I'm not dragging him to church
I
2,
remember
3
this.
times a week, and since COVID came, now for him, church is at 10 o'clock. He takes his computer and goes in the bedroom, watches a church service, and he comes out when it's over and church is done for the week, and
Feeling so holy. Yeah.
Wow, he's actually into that, huh? Oh boy.
I don't I don't think he believes much of it. I really don't, but he doesn't wanna talk about it, so we don't talk about it.
Yeah.
Okay. That
The one point that I did really wanna know about what he felt about was the global flood, because, I mean,
Mm.
there so obviously was not a global flood. I thought, "Does he actually?" So I did ask him that, and he said, "No, I think there was a large local flood." I said, "Okay,
of course. Yeah.
that makes a lot more sense."
The rivers flooded as they always did around that time period. Yes.
Well, there is evidence of a very large local flood about 7,500 years ago, and that
Yeah.
probably is the origin of the Epic of Gilgamesh. And of course, the Genesis flood story is based on the Epic of Gilgamesh. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Several of those. Yeah. Yeah, I
Mhm.
knew that was a big thing for you and your deconstruction was Noah's Ark and the flood. So yeah, that would make
mhm,
sense. You would ask him of
mhm.
that. What about Adam and Eve? Does he believe in them?
Yeah, I haven't asked, and it was kind of pushing to ask about Noah's Ark, so I'm not going to push the envelope too hard.
That's all right. I know. Yeah. Married couple, we always have to have our own little things, right? And we might roll our eyes at them, but yeah.
I really think that he's afraid that if we were ever to talk about it, I would talk him out of his faith, and he doesn't wanna do that.
Oh,
Holding on. He's
I
holding
can
on.
be
yeah.
pretty persuasive.
Well,
Yeah. Yeah.
indeed, to the tune of what, 11,000 subscribers you have on your channel
Yeah.
now? I should say so, Granny. Preach.
Yes. Yep.
Preach the good news of atheism. I love it.
Yay. Hmm.
Mhm. I have to think that you are certainly not the only wife in a similar situation.
I
'Cause
know I'm not. When I've done some responses to the NIFB church, particularly there's a church in Tennessee, I can't remember the name of it. I haven't responded to it for quite some time because they left the NIFB, and so I kind of quit paying attention to them. But I put a comment on one of their videos about, feeling sorry for his wife, because he did this whole if you go through my content and look for the one where I said worst sermon ever and I gave it a gold ribbon, it was reverse consent, I believe is the title of it. He says that not only does a wife not need to consent to sex, the wife needs to consent to not have sex. If the man asks for sex, it's her duty to give it to her, and the only time she cannot have she can refuse sex is if he consents to not having sex. And yeah, it's really awful. And so I put a comment on that video that I really feel sorry for your wife. And his wife responded and said, "Oh, I'm fine with this." And I totally get where she's coming from, because she is where I was during the dark years. And I'm sure she feels like, she's pleasing God. And that's why I want to tell this story, is because there are women in that position and they feel like they are doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And I think the only way to get through to them is to convince them that what they believe simply isn't true.
Right.
You've got to break the God belief before you can ever get through on the sexual stuff.
Yeah. When you believe in a God that supports marital rape, maybe that God's not worth believing in.
Mm-hmm. But you won't get there that way.
Yeah.
You'll never get there. You've got to go for the factual. And for me, the whole basis of my faith was the inerrancy of the Bible. And so I was going to follow it as long as it was inerrant. And so what tumbled the whole thing for me was being shown that the Bible wasn't inerrant.
Oh,
Makes me feel like we ought to start a list of what are the things, like what are the like, is linchpin the right word?
Yes.
Like the things that are holding this for people. Like I bet
and it's
there's
different
not
for
as
different
many as
people.
yeah, I think that's true, but I bet there's not as many varied ones as we might think. I bet we could bucket them and like have a strategy for everyone.
yeah.
I think
This is
you
like
have to have
getting
a
me in
separate
mind.
conversation with each person, and for each person, why do you think that? Why do you believe that?
That's
And
true.
make them nail down exactly why they believe that. And on the other hand, one of the things that really led to me, losing my faith was my son asked me to watch an art protest. And they had this banner that said incest and genocide park. And that really irritated me. And I started, but that also got me to thinking, okay, why does that poster irritate me so much? I said, well, it says incest. There's no incest in the yeah, I guess there is incest in the genocide or in the Noah's Ark.
And
But
the genocide story, you
there's
just
no
called it the
genocide in
genocide.
the Noah's Ark story. Yeah, I guess there is genocide
Whole
in the
thing was
Noah's Ark
genocide.
stories. It irritated me, but it made me think.
Kelly, it was so nice to talk with you today.
You too. Thank you for having me. Thank you for letting me tell that story in a place where it's safe.
Absolutely, and hopefully it'll bring more people forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're guaranteed to have at least one person who sees this video and react to it. Be like, oh, I either was in that situation or I am currently, and let's fix that. So that's the goal.
Yeah.
That's the goal. That's the goal. And it probably feels good to
Yes.
get it off your chest too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. I mean, right now you're not the only one who knows this.
Yeah.
You're not
There were
having
a
to
few
hold
other
it.
people that knew.
Yeah, okay. But, I don't know. Are those heavy loads a little easier to bear when you know that other people know also what you've been through, kind of?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm so glad that you have found peace with your husband today and that you two are both happy, it seems, with the life that you've carved out for yourself now.
Yes, I'm glad it worked out and it wasn't like, oh,
know.
you couldn't get over the things that had happened and you guys split ways, because that's easy to do, but
Yeah.
you worked through them. It's amazing.
I think we would have if it weren't for the religion. Because divorce was not an option when I was a believer. So I would not have considered leaving him. And he still feels that way, that divorce is not an option.
Okay. But at least in the meantime, you feel okay about that. Because I assume that you feel empowered enough at this point that if you actually
if I wanted to leave, I could now. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Well, good. I
Wow.
suppose I have no regrets, but on the subject of sex toys now, you gonna go get some? My whole world changed when I discovered the rabbit. Holy shit. Like you do not have orgasm like this. Woo! The problem is most vibrators are not strong enough, Kelly. It's like you feel super unsatisfied with most of them. This is probably a good $100. It's worth the investment. I orgasm like 10 times in a row.
I have the magic wand, and that one definitely is strong enough. It's the one that was like originally a back massager that everyone was like, oh, I can do something else with this.
It's perfect. It's like this. And so you don't get too much stimulation. It's
oh, yeah.
so
like
good.
The little ears kind of go on either side of the
They kind of go on either side.
Clit. Clit.
I have furry handcuffs in here too. I have a cock ring.
This is the magic wand.
Yeah, it looks like a back massager.
I was thinking it looked like a microphone.
Yeah. What? I mean, here's the rabbit.
Okay, now I kind of want to have an episode where we're having a conversation. This is supposed to be for G-spot up inside, but it's much better for clit.
Oh, and it's got little suction right here, or like vibrator. So yeah.
Oh yeah, that's the new kind of toy that's out. Is little suction, little clit suction. Have we embarrassed you yet?
No.
Thanks everybody for being here. Like and subscribe, and live your life.
Live your life.
Live your life.